Hi, my name's Amy Robinson. I'm with Enlightened Healthy Living and I'm a wellness advocate for doTERRA Essential Oils. I am sitting here today with Dr. Carlos Santo and I'm so excited. He's a naturopathic doctor, board certified here in the state of Arizona, and he is also the founder of Wellness One Nation. Welcome, Dr. Santo.
Thanks,
I guess
Amy.
We are going to be talking about raising kids naturally today.
Naturally, yes. That's the big word.
Yeah, so what's the biggest challenge for us parents, today with raising our kids?
Well, we see a lot of kids in the clinic, and the biggest challenge today is time and the level of stress that kids are under. We as adults, essentially, we already know life is challenging, but we don't realize oftentimes is the effect that it can have on our children's health. It's a big thing. We live in this little bubble of electronic world.
Yes.
And so kids' realities, their sense of reality is very different than it was perhaps when you or I were little, where we might have more naturally been inclined to go outside in nature and connect individually, interpersonally. They don't do that anymore.
Yeah.
Now the method is social media to do that. It's an artificial world, and even television reflects this in reality TV. It should be really called non-reality TV because honestly, it's someone else's reality, but it's not our own,
Yeah, exactly.
Well, why we find that interesting, I don't know. What I do like to talk about is the chemical onslaught as well on our nervous systems, because this is, to me, and the holistic perspective, I think the part that's really ignored quite a bit in medical circles, and the impact that the chemical effect can have on the brain and on the nervous system. And in a developing individual in preschool age all the way through, this can be significant, and it's unfortunate, but it's just overlooked, and therefore it's not treated.
Yeah.
So we're so quick to just medicate when we really need to step back and look at what's causing the problem. So yes, we have to look at, for instance, the family dynamic. Is it a single parent household? Is there a lot of strife in the household? Is there abuse? We have to, of course, rule all of these things out.
Yeah, look at the whole picture.
Right, but we also need to know what was the preterm development like. Was there any trauma to the carrying mom at the time during the prenatal 9 or 10 months, and then was there any birth trauma during delivery, and then what was the early childhood like, and all of these things. What was the earliest time that we can identify when my child changed? They were fine up until when? And then at this point in their development, we started noticing these symptoms. Or sometimes it can be that they were noticed right away from birth. It was just things that were not developmentally correct. All of this has to be taken into account. And then beyond that, then we can look at what's changed in areas that we're not so much in control of, like the state of nutrition today compared to what it was 20, 30, 40 years ago, before we had high fructose corn syrup, NutraSweet, Splenda, genetically modified foods.
Yes, GMOs.
Right? Hormones, added hormones that's only been around since the early 90s in our food. These are things that we were not exposed to as young children,
so
and they are today, big time. And so, can we prove cause and effect? No, not without a whole bunch of attorneys and tons of money behind us to do so. But if a smart person were to just look at the data and see, then you just see, wow, okay, correlation, hello, light bulb. And then we can make some changes.
Exactly, and ADHD is on the rise, right?
Big time. Autism now supposedly is less than 1 in 88, which I highly question that anyway. I don't attribute this to just better diagnostics. I attribute this more really toward, frankly, the state of the toxic environment that we live in, because other countries that don't use GMOs, don't use high fructose corn syrup, for instance, don't put hormones in their food supply, we don't see these problems. You go to the Middle East, you go to Europe, South America, much of Asia, all but in the real most developed areas, we don't see this prevalence of these disorders in children. And therefore, we have to take a step back and look. But maybe we are poisoning our kids slowly, thinking we're doing the best thing we can for them, but we're really not.
Right. So here's a question. Should we be, putting our kids through detox program every so often to kind of try to get these toxins out of their systems?
Well, certainly, but let's take a step back even before that and start looking at, first off, is what can we do proactively to not
Not
increase
have
the
to-
level of toxicity.
Right.
So we have to look at household products, not only food-wise, but what about we putting on our skin? Some parents are, and they should be, are concerned about fluoride in the toothpaste and in the water. And by the way, here in Scottsdale, Arizona, the city does not fluoridate the water.
Yay.
Phoenix does, but Scottsdale does not.
Go
It's a personal
Scottsdale.
choice. These are things that people should have choice over, whether they
Yes,
believe in them
absolutely.
or not, whether they're problematic or not. It's good to have toothpaste with or without fluoride so that I can make a choice for my
Yes.
family.
Yeah.
Why not?
Yes.
And that's all. So we have to look at, again, what are we putting in the kids' bodies?
Yes.
Internally, topically, because these things will absorb right into the bloodstream and directly irritate and change brain chemistry, neurotransmitter production, and therefore translate into ability to focus, pay attention, sit still without jittering, function normally in social environments, have empathy for fellow classmates and friends,
Yes.
empathy and compassion, and things that are just necessary for society to work. These things will all be much better when the body itself is in a pure state.
So as a parent, I should try to, stay away from artificial sweeteners.
Yes.
Maybe limit the amount of time my kids are on video games or watching TV.
I'd like to talk about
GMOs.
that too. Yes,
yeah,
absolutely.
let's talk about
That one more strategy you mentioned. Most parents know giving kids sugar is not a good thing. It's going to make them hyperactive. You can just look at it.
Oh, yeah.
You give them popcorn or something and they're allergic to corn, and then you watch the effect.
Yes.
And they're bouncing off the
absolutely.
walls.
Happens with my kids.
I'll have a parent give a kid a snack right there in front of me, and maybe I'm treating them for hyperactive disorder or autism or some part of the spectrum, and they give their kids an energy bar. And the moment that kid gets that bar, she starts sniffling. Within seconds, she starts sniffling. She's like that. And the parent just keeps talking. I said, "You paying attention?" She goes, "No, she's here for hyperactive disorder. She's not hyperactive." I said, "But she's allergic to that bar you just gave her." You see,
gosh.
these are things that we pay attention to,
Yeah.
but parents are overwhelmed. They can't notice these little subtleties,
Yes.
but they're so important. Now let's talk about beyond the dietary aspect, because you can look this stuff up and know, okay, sugar, artificial coloring,
Yes.
as such. But what about choices with? We know kids are going to use electronics.
Yes.
Can we come up with a
A lot.
strategy, for instance, that's going to be reasonable to say, okay, so what I like to tell parents is limit electronics to within 2 or 3 hours of bedtime.
Oh, okay.
Give them a window of zero electronics within at least 2 to 3 hours of bedtime. Why? Because those visual images do not shut off the moment you power down your phone or your
Right.
screen. And I mean off, completely off, where they can't hear the phone, someone sending them a text message or anything else. These are good practices, because to get proper REM stage sleep, the mind really needs to be in a premeditative or meditative state before you go actually close your eyes and lie down.
So
the
if-
best way to do it is to read a book that actually
Yes.
is on paper, not a Kindle.
Read more.
And not a Kindle, not on an LCD screen or something. It's really best to be read with paper, and it's just much better on the eyes. Yeah.
So possibly if a parent out there, does have a child that is not sleeping well, that could definitely be the case, maybe. Just too much.
And if
too
they're
much
not,
stimulation.
That's right. If they're not sleeping well, it's going to affect their performance the next day. And,
cranky.
and then what we do is we medicate them instead of treating them properly.
Right.
Make sure the kids are well hydrated, because dehydration can really create irritability and affect blood sugar and attentive levels by itself. And then, speaking of blood sugar, we need to make sure kids have healthy snacks in between meals. If the school allows them to, it's going to keep a healthy blood sugar level during extreme learning periods, especially. The brain consumes a ton of sugar to maintain its metabolic activity, and therefore we need to replenish the brain source of sugar, and the best way to do it, of course, is through a healthy diet. So make sure the kids are not getting low blood sugar, make sure they're staying hydrated, and make sure what we're giving them for nutrition is high-level nutrition without the negative drawback.
Yeah.
Artificial colors, flavors, sweeteners, hydrogenated oils, GMOs, processed grains, and if at all possible, do a rotation diet to identify where a problem might be.
Yes.
The top 4 or 5 foods we might look at, just to close this if we could.
Yeah.
And then I want to let you get to the
Yeah,
oils. We want to do a quick, check.
And I was thinking about picky eaters, because I know a lot of kids out there are picky eaters.
Right.
So.
No kidding. So what we can do, though, is we look at the top potential 4 or 5 offending food agents and rotate them in and out every 4 or 5 days and see what happens. So you can start with wheat, go 4 or 5 days. Change, no change. Okay, we'll start with the next one, corn. And that's just, not in the obvious form either. It can be in corn syrup, corn chips, corn tortillas, right? Depending on, do that. Change or no change. In 4 or 5 days, that's enough time.
So that gives you plenty of time to know if there's any reactions.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I like starting with wheat because it's pretty horrible. Next is maybe dairy or corn. Then the next one might be dairy.
Okay.
The next one might be soy. But soy is not as prevalent in our diet as it would be, say, in an Asian diet. But we do, soy milk was very popular one time. But these energy bars largely have soy protein isolates in them because it's very inexpensive.
Lecithin?
Soy lecithin is another. So anywhere you see the word soy, look for it.
There
are healthier forms of soy, such as the soybean pods in edamame, or say in miso soup. But if someone has a true soy allergy, they need to watch it entirely, potentially. Supplements contain soy isoflavones, but that's more for like women who are treating hormonal imbalance. And the 5th one might be eggs. So assuming that a parent has already taken out all the artificial bad stuff, right, we talked about, then we can take on these natural foods. Like I said, you could start with wheat, corn, soy, dairy, and maybe eggs as a top potential 5 offending food agents. If none of those were identified, then they can actually do a food allergy panel to see if there's a greater contributor that they're not catching, they're missing. So let's tell me a little bit about what you would have learned with the oils, the ability to calm kids down or improve sleep.
So the essential oils for kids just work so quickly. It's really, really fun to watch because, you can literally see it in front of your eyes, after you diffuse a certain oil, such as serenity or lavender, and you can just watch the kids start to calm down. I use it on my kids all the time for that. So, serenity, lavender, wild orange are just very, very calming oils. And just for the folk, a lot of kids nowadays do have the ADD, ADHD, diagnosis, and there are oils that, are blends that really do help the kids with focus. Believe it or not, lemon oil is a great oil for focus, placed on the right side of your neck, opposite hemispheres. So you rub it into the right side of your neck and it does activate your left brain. We also have an oil called In Tune, which is our focus blend, and it really does, keep you focused.
Nice.
So a lot of natural options for kids, with that, and they can take it and put it in their backpack. My daughter loves to have, she's got a little, keychain where she has her peppermint in there, which will help her, during testing. If they're studying and they smell peppermint and then they re-smell it during testing, it actually will help with recall. So that's really neat. Rosemary is also a great oil for, memory as well. So a lot of different, ways we can use the oils, especially for increasing, their immunity so that they don't get sick. On Guard is an amazing oil for, everyday use to boost the immune system. And, I think just medications in general, a lot of our kids, a lot of parents are giving their kids so many medications, for instance, ear infections. So many kids out there have so many ear infections and they're just getting prescription after prescription after prescription. If only their parents knew how to use the essential oils, they could clear that up and prevent those ear infections. So, I love to teach families about, how to use essential oils on their kids, to just really take them to that next level of health and support their kids, with being able to naturally grow up and, keep the toxins out of their systems. So
lots of options for people.
Yes, lots of options.
Okay.
Well, thank you so much, Dr. Carlos, for being here.
Another great topic.